G'day and welcome back to another episode of Tomo's Tune-Ups. On this episode, we're back on the 850 engine. We're going to start stripping some of the components off it and work through the list of items that we have. Now, whenever I'm doing a big job like this, I always get a piece of paper, write a heap of things down that we're going to be doing. That way we can work through it. As we work through it, we can then cross it off, and we can also structure how we're going to do the job. So instead of doing things all over the gearbox and then coming back, doing some stuff in the engine, going back to the gearbox, we can prioritize how we're going to do things. And if we need to, we can kill 2 or 3 birds with one stone. So let's get back to it. So we're now up to the point where we're about to replace the thermostat housing gasket. I've just removed the thermostat housing, and lo and behold, there is no thermostat in here whatsoever. Not in the block, not in the housing. So this is quite a concern, simply because the thermostat enables the engine to get to operating temperature as fast as possible. Without having this in there, the engine's going to run quite cold all the time. So it could even have a potential problem with the head gasket overheating or other issues that haven't been addressed before. So before we go any further, I'm going to show this to the customer. I'm going to let them know that we need to put one in there. Even if it costs me 50 bucks out of my own pocket, I'm going to have to throw one in there. Now, it's always good practice to make sure that things like this are fitted. It's okay to change different things, put bigger manifolds on, change the tappet cover, pulley size, all that sort of stuff. But things like thermostats, if you are trying to mask a problem and you've sold a car and you've even bought a car and it doesn't have this in there, and you notice that it's not getting hot all the time, or it has a funny problem with it, chances are someone's probably done something in order for it to be sold and get rid of the car and mask a particular problem. So that's my concern about this not being fitted in the car. So I'm going to chase this up with the customer. We're going to order a new one before we go any further, and then we're going to proceed with the build. The last clip you saw was me working on the 850, and we just pulled the thermostat housing out and found out there was no thermostat in there. We have been waiting a little bit for parts. They are pretty much here at the moment. They should be here tomorrow, essentially. So what we're going to be doing in the meantime is a couple of really important things. So there are two things we really need to address. The first one is going to be the positive cable that runs from the battery to the starter switch. We're going to be re-securing that, applying a bit of conduit around the outside so it looks all nice and pretty, and we're also going to re-secure it to the body. The second thing we're going to be doing is running a breather pipe from the fuel tank to the engine with a T-piece. Now, if you have a look inside here, there is a pipe, this one here, that you can see. I've just run that temporarily, but that's the pipe we're going to be running. So there's a breather pipe that runs from the fuel tank all the way through to the engine to vent the gases from inside the fuel tank. Now, it is imperative that the fuel tank breathes. Now, what I mean by breathing is not literally in and out, but it allows air in, but doesn't allow the vapors out. So for those of you out there who already know, and for those of you who don't, fuel vapor is what is flammable. So every single time I come in my shed, I find that this place absolutely stinks of fuel, and that's because that breather pipe is not fitted whatsoever. So in order for us to combat that, we need to run this vent pipe. Now at the moment, the way that it's run is it literally just runs down underneath the back of the car. Now, as good as this may seem at the time, especially if you're outside, you know, if you're not parking it in a sealed garage, it might be okay for a while. But the problem is there, if you're in a sealed garage like I am at the moment, as you can see behind me, as I said, every single time I come in here, it smells of fuel. So having this at such a high vapor level, if, for instance, I was to light up a cigarette, which, mind you, I don't smoke, or do some electrical work, if one of those sparks or a bit of ember drops near the fuel tank, bang, see you later, the whole car's going to burn to the ground. So not only is it illegal to vent those vapors outside without some sort of charcoal system or even re-burning the vapors from inside the fuel tank, but it's also not good for the environment, and we really need to be venting those. So it is a real big safety concern. So sadly, this was one thing that I picked up on the customer and said, hey, we really need to fix this. So regardless whether he was prepared to go ahead or not, I went and invested in some hose. It's not overly expensive, it's fairly cheap actually. So we're gonna start running that now, and I'll show you the pipe as well we're gonna be running, and I'm gonna show you the cable as well we're gonna be reattaching. Okay, so this is the current fuel breather pipe that we have. As you can see, the exhaust is hanging just down here. So considering how close this pipe runs to the exhaust, it's no wonder this thing hasn't gone up in flames as yet. Also, you can see there's been a bit of repair done along here. It's been done pretty poorly, which is quite a disappointment, I think, to say the least. It's had a new battery box at one stage, which looks pretty good, but also the stuff that it applied around the outside isn't overly good in terms of its sealing properly. So let's rip this old one out and we can run the new pipe. Also, maybe while we're here, we can remove some of this wiring as well. I don't understand why this earth isn't connected. For whatever reason, maybe they've run a separate earth for something else, but we can probably get rid of that while we're here. Also, this wiring looks pretty dodgy as well, considering there's just a bit of tape hanging around this bit of wire. Should be really quite well insulated, considering it's running an electric fuel pump, but also the fact that it's running right near the exhaust. All right, so we get rid of that pipe to begin with, which is that there. I'm just gonna grab a pair of side cutters and we can run that new pipe down there. Okay, so there we go. That's the pipe there. We're just gonna pull it straight through. All we're gonna be using is just a bit of vacuum pipe. It doesn't really have anything going through there that's going to cause any dramas, but it is a silicon pipe, so it's going to withstand the fuel vapors as well. So buying a classic Mini, these are the sort of things that you want to be looking for, and improvements you want to be making as well to the vehicle. You want to always ensure it's not only safe, but you want to make sure that it is reliable. And when you are in a closed garage like myself, or you're doing some work in your own shed, that you're not going to gas yourself out and before you know it, pass out because of the fumes that are coming from the fuel tank. All right, so we should have enough pipe here. If we don't, we can just get some joiners and a bit more pipe, and that'll be all right to run. So what I might try and do is follow this line up here, so this rear brake line where it runs to the front of the car. So what I'm going to do is just run it hopefully over the subframe and down and around through here. That way we can just cable tie it to the side of here, and that way it's out of the way. It's also neat and tidy. All right, so this is where it can become a bit tricky. If you have a firm piece of wire, you can run it through, or even if the subframe's out, you can probably even just run it quite easily. So let's just see if we can get it down through here. We might just need to grab a claw to be able to pull it down properly, otherwise it may not bend around the corner because it is a silicon pipe. All right, so I thought I had a claw at home, but I don't. Instead, we're just going to use a pair of long nose pliers with a bit of a bend on them. Hopefully we can get up in there. which might be proving to be a little bit difficult. It is. Okay, so I've got a couple of different pliers. We're just going to try. Hopefully we can just get it with these long nose and just pull it straight through. Just go fishing for a little bit. Once it decides to grab, we'll just pull it through. There we go. Well, the good thing about this is the customer's going to be watching this and they can go back and re-watch everything whenever they want. It's fully public. People can, you know, comment and view on it. They can also, you know, give me their feedback, which is always a positive sign for me. I really do thrive on feedback, and sometimes it can come across a bit negative, the things that you say or, you know, the way that someone writes something. But, you know, personally for me, I do enjoy it because it enables me to grow as a person, but also as a mechanic. Also, it gives them the satisfaction, the customer knowing that what I've done is recorded, and that way I can justify the money that I charge as well. I'm just going to grab a cable tie here. We're just going to put one around the corner and then start running it all the way down along this pipe. All right, so like I've said before in previous episodes, the best and worst thing about working on a Mini is the room. There is not a lot of room, and it makes it quite uncomfortable to do things sometimes. But when you do stuff, sometimes it is quite easy because everything is quite accessible. So what I'm going to do, just to start off with, we're just going to put a cable tie around here. I'm going to leave the end on it, and then we can come back and cut it off later. I've got a really cool tech tip coming up for you about cable ties. Alright, so I'm going to stagger these probably about every 10 inches. That way it remains secure, but also it's not going to be dragging. Alright, so with these, I'm just going to bend these tabs down so that way we can run it with the original clamps that hold this brake line, but also we'll run a cable tie as well in between the clamps here and here, and then all the way along. Now, like I said, because it's a vacuum line, it's not holding any pressure at all, so it doesn't need to be super secure, but these clamps will just do the job in which we need it to do. Now, my wife used to complain quite a lot, and still does, that whenever she'd come into the shed, it stunk like fuel. And for many years, I didn't run a vent pipe between the tank and the engine. I just ran it to atmosphere. And it wasn't until we got a place with the garage that I realised, hang on a minute, this is A, not right, and B, it absolutely stinks. So I can understand where this customer's coming from, that when they take this car home, it's going to stink out their shed. So best to rectify it now whilst we got it. So it looks like we're quite short in terms of the length of the pipe, so we're just going to get a little bit more pipe to go on the end of here. We'll just get a joiner and then run it up to the manifold, which will sit probably about here, and we get a T-piece and just tap it in. So that's one job. Now onto the battery cable. Now here's Tomo's tech tip of the day. Grab yourself a set of these pliers. I got these from Snap-on. They are specifically designed for cutting off cable ties. They've got a completely flat end, so when you cut it, it's not going to leave any burrs or debris, and you're not going to slice yourself. So all you're going to do is just run it up to the end of the cable tie, cut it right at the very end, then you can run your hand all the way along the end and you're not going to slice yourself whatsoever. In the previous episode, I have spoken about using a razor blade to cut it. This is significantly safer. Once you get yourself a pair of these, you'll never go backwards, and you'll also never hurt yourself. Make sure as well, once you finish cutting the cable tie, that you roll it around out of the way, so that way it's not going to be dangling anywhere, but it's also nice and neat. It's always important to make sure that when you're working on a car, whether it be your own or someone else's, that you clean up after yourself, simply because it looks good, it looks neat, but when someone works on a car and it's got cable ties hanging everywhere and you're slicing yourself open and you can have a look and physically see someone's been there before, you think, what an idiot, who has been on this car before? So clean up after yourself, cut off the cable ties, and remember that someone else, not just yourself, is going to be working on the car one day. So always do what's best for the next person. Okay, so the next issue we're going to be addressing is this cable right here. So this is the power cable. As you can see, it's a bit of a floppy dangler. So it goes directly to the start switch here, which is on the floor, and then it runs all the way down the bottom. Now there's only one clip. You probably can't see it down the other end. I'll just try and turn the camera so you can actually see it. So just down the end there where the jack stand is, there's one clip that holds it. all the way in. So as you can see here, it is quite loose and it's coming down by probably about 100 mil. So considering it's been repaired at one stage here, like there's some electrical tape hanging around the sides, it's been crimped, there's really poor connections up here, and there is movement in there as well. It really makes me wonder not only how safe this is, but also how long it's been like this for. So what I'm going to do, I was just going to re-secure it to the bottom of the car, but what I'm going to do now is remove the nut off the end. I'm going to remove this wire completely. I'm going to get a new one. We're going to run it, and it's going to be a hell of a lot newer than what it was, and we're going to put some new terminals on it. So let's remove it. I'll take it to work, measure it up, and then we get a new piece of wire cut. You know, now that I've replaced that fuel breather pipe from the fuel tank up to the engine, the place smells so much better. Like, I'm not absolutely dying in the fumes of the fuel tank. So it's good to know that what I've done to rectify not only the smell but also the safety of the car, it's actually made such a difference. So what I might do in the meantime is just put a screw in the end of the pipe. That way it's not going to leak out any extra fumes and gas me out whilst I'm in here. Yeah, so as you can see here, this wire has seen better days. Look at this. This is absolutely shocking. All these wires are exposed. There's no insulation around here, like it's all starting to come away. This is likely the original wire from the car. So these wires that are exposed, so this is a real big no-no right here. You can see the wires are exposed, but also there are some wires that are cut. So this has probably been like this for quite some time. All right, so this is absolutely shocking to find out. Someone's put a bit of garden hose on here to try and rectify the problem and prevent it arcing out. So all these wires are exposed. There's some that's been cut, so it's not getting a good power supply whatsoever. And hopefully you can see down in there, maybe not, but there's exposed wires all the way here. So this is really upsetting to see that someone's actually tried to put a bit of garden hose over it to try and rectify it. So we're definitely going to be replacing this entire cable. Plus, this is a constant power wire. So this comes directly from the battery to the starter switch, which is just up here. So that is causing a massive safety concern, that if these wires were to touch the body, it wouldn't take much for it to earth out, and then it would just literally burn the car to the ground. All right, so we'll just undo that clip there, take that bit out. We'll just cut that cable tie and then undo it from up inside the battery, and either pull the cable up or we'll pull the cable down through the battery box. I get that this is an old car, but some of this stuff is absolutely dodgy. Not only that, but it is super unprofessional. All right, so there's more than one way to skin a cat. We're just going to remove this bolt here. Oh my lord, that is completely finger tight. I barely even moved that, and that wire just came completely out of there very easily. Like I said, guys, if you're going to do stuff like this, do it right. Do it right the first time. Make it look professional. If you're unsure, seek professional advice. Get the right tools. Do the research that you need to be able to get stuff like this done correctly. Having dodgy stuff like this applied to your car is not only dangerous, but it is also very, very unsafe and unprofessional. While we're here, we're also going to replace this dodgy old earth strap. These are pretty good from memory, and people in the comments can correct me if I'm wrong, but for the age of it and for the size, man, I'm just going to replace that. There's no point keeping this old thing here. So that's it on the 850 today, guys. We've done quite a lot. So we've been able to get most of the engine repairs done. So any of the oil leaks, next episode, we're going to jump onto the gearbox. I'm going to start stripping it. And then hopefully by then we'll have the tool all the way from England. So we've come quite a long way, and I've had the car for several weeks now at my place. A lot of it is just waiting on parts and tools, so that's no drama with the customer. He's not in a hurry to get it back. So until next time, guys, as always, stay COVID safe, and you'll see this little 850 beauty only here on Tomo's Tune Ups.